And then Scout said, okay, Giant Apple, now you have to stop before I crash too. The Scout said, oh no, it's the slimy swamp. The Scout said, help. Or when Trixie says, hey, dear Squad, how you see my kitten? Where Trixie says, there you are. I've been looking all over for you. Then Marshall Kitty said, achoo! Where Trixie says, you guys, my kitten has spots on his tail, and his fur is really itchy. What happened? Where Kai says, sneezy and itchy. Where Kai says, I think I know what your kitten has. The kitty pox. The kitty pox? Where Trixie says, what does that mean, kitty pox? Where Kai says, it means when kitten gets kitty pox. Where Jade says, I'll handle this. Before Jade was about to use her crystal power, it was too dangerous. Where Trixie says, Jade, don't! That's too dangerous to use a plant power on kitten. Where Trixie says, that could be really dangerous. Where Trixie says, I guess I'll have to help my kitten. Where Trixie says, come on, kitty, let's go. Then Trixie says, kitty. And then Jade says, poor Trixie's kitten. I think he needs to go home and rest. Where Trixie says, but I have to go to the forest and get that medicine. Where Kai says, don't worry, we'll make that medicine for you. Where Kai says, I have the ingredients right here. Where Kai says, so we need fairy dust from Sparkle Dust Mountain, one leaf from that flower, and one fur from a Siamese cat, which means Scout. The Trixie says, okay, I'll let you find that medicine. Where Trixie says, don't worry, the Deer Squad will be here any minute. But Marshall Kitty was too itchy, so Trixie scratched his belly. Trixie says, oh, okay. Also, Trixie says, and now you're cold. Where Trixie says, oh, okay. Also, Trixie says, and now you're hot. Where Trixie says, ugh, you're thirsty. Then Marshall Kitty said, meow. And then Trixie said, already. And then Trixie says, here you go, have some water. But just before Marshall Kitty thought to take a sip, he sneezed, and then that water ended up all over Trixie, where Marshall Kitty says, achoo! He said, meow. That means he says, excuse me. Then Trixie says, ugh. And then meanwhile at Central Forest, the second ingredient, one leaf from a flower, where Jade says, guys, it's not just any flower, that is the tricky flower. They say, the tricky flower? Where Jade says, yeah, the tricky flower is really picky to be picked. Where Lola says, let me handle this. Then Lola says, whoa! And they said, ah! But just before Wufu was about to grab that leaf, the leaf from a flower grabbed her. Where Jade says, Wufu! Where Lola says, a little help. Where Lola says, that flower has got us, and we can't get out. Where Jade says, don't worry, we'll think of a plan. Where Jade says, how to get a flower to listen? Where Jade says, that's it! I remember the trick! If you want to pick that leaf, you had to tickle the flower. Where Jade says, okay guys, ready? Where Jade says, it's tickle time! And then Jade, Kai, Rami, and Bobby have to tickle the flower to get Lola and Wufu free. And then the flower put Lola and Wufu down. That's where I said, phew, it stopped. Maybe it'll be okay now. Where I said, huh? Then we said, then we said, no, it's slow motion. Where I said, Neville, what are you doing? Where I said, yikes! Where I said, no, stop! Also, I said, phew, that was close. Where I said, or not. Where I said, wait, no, don't! Where I said, in here again. Also, I said, hey, this place is not too bad. It's kind of cozy or less. Where I said, what the what? Where I said, no, don't. Where I said, where I said, Where I said, where I said, now that's what I called one strong and a scary video. Or where I said, okay, let's see what we have here today. Hey, where I said, I'm out. Where I said, Neville, what do you think you're doing? Where Neville says, just trying to scare you. Where I said, or where I said, hey Neville, watch this. They said, wow, oof. And then Neville said, hey Anna, I watched your card. I said, oh, how very nice of you, Les. I said, yeah. Also, I said, Neville, you better try not to stir me in the shower, Les. I said, yeah. Also, I said, Neville, you're not helping. Also, I said, Neville, quit rubbing on my face. I said, it's not polite to rub on people's faces. Also, I said, he kept rubbing on my head. Then I said, don't. Then I said, stop that. I said, no. I said, give me a bald spot. Also, I said,